Here I am, guys. Welcome to another live edition of Julius Freeman Cinema, Talk Cinema. Usually it's talking comics, but tonight it's going to be something different. Tonight it's going to be about cinema. This past week, for those of you who have been tuning in on my show, starting on Monday, except for Tuesday, because Tuesday I didn't do a live stream, um, I was just doing live streams talking about comic books, talking about my campaign, talking about the struggle and the pain that I had to go through to raise the money that I raised on my campaign. And tonight I decided to change it up a bit because, I don't want to overkill myself. I don't want to bore you with just continuation of talking comics. So I decided to change it up and talk about cinema, talk about movies. I was raised on movies for most of my life. My stepdad will watch the old classics on TV, the black and whites, the old 70s movies and 80s. So I had that growing up. And then my biological dad, who was still in my life, would take me to the theater. He would take me to the movie theater. So I watched the movies in the big screen, and I got to experience the best of both worlds, old school and new school. And when I grew up and I became an adult and I went to college, I studied film and cinema for a few years until I didn't end up finishing, but I still ended up loving cinema because of it, because of my upbringing. So tonight's episode is going to be about underrated directors. Yes, the directors who do not get the love that they deserve. When I say the word, or the name, I should say, Spielberg, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino, you know who those people are. You know exactly who they are because they're a brand name. You don't have to even know their movies. You just know their name. So tonight it's going to be about the directors who you know the movie, you watched the movie, but you don't know who directed it. So tonight we will appreciate the underappreciated directors of our time. And I'm going to have a co-host. And our co-host, my co-host, I should say, is a good friend of mine. I've worked with him for a few years now. And for a long time, he and I would sit down in the office and talk about movies, talk about directors, actors, writers, old cinema, new cinema, old Hollywood, new Hollywood. And the more I talk to this guy, the more I realize, you know what, we should do something together. We should do a show together. Make a show, and let's see what we can do with it. So tonight's topic, we decided that we should talk about the underrated directors of our time because we feel that they deserve the love. And if you guys out there watching tonight who will tune in later, hopefully, I'm going to open up the show. I'm going to let you come on, and then I'm going to let you tell us who you feel is an underappreciated director, undervalued, I guess you could say. And then we'll give you some time to talk about why you feel they are underrated and why more people should watch their movies. And so without further ado, I would like to introduce to you my co-host. He is a cinematographer. He graduated from the University of Miami, and he is a talented director and writer in his own right. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sean Malone. Sean, what's up, buddy? How you doing?
Hey, Julio, long time no see.
Yeah, man. How you holding up tonight on Friday night?
Yeah, shaking off the week, man. But the nerves are giving me some energy, so let's do it. Yeah.
Good.
For the glowing introduction. Appreciate it.
Oh man, no problem. I'm happy that you're on the show. I'm happy that we are going to talk about something that I feel that more people should talk about, especially if you consider yourself a cinephile, right? If you're a cinephile and you love movies, this episode is for you. And if you're not a cinephile, if you're just a regular moviegoer, this show is also for you because then you will learn something. You will learn the names of the people of could potentially be the directors of your favorite movies, and you never knew the director because you never bothered to know, or because they don't get the what am I looking? The word I'm looking for. Help me out here, Sean. They don't get the I want to say recognition, but there's a stronger word I want to use here.
Um,
Like revered, not as revered as the Scorseses, the Spielbergs, the Tarantinos, the Kurosawas, the John Fords, people who've kind of got lost in the shuffle of time and all that good stuff. Miranda, hey Miranda, how you doing? Glad that you could join us to talk about this first episode of Talking Cinema and Underappreciated Directors. Hopefully you have some names that you want to share with us. If you like, you can hop on later in the show when I open up the show and leave the link on the live chat for you guys to join in. So let's get started. Do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go first.
All right. So what's the first name on your list for underrated director? And you have to explain why you feel this director is underrated. Go for it.
So I made a list of, I think I have 5. One of them, who I'll reveal later, is maybe a borderline underappreciated director. We might argue about that.
All right.
The first one on my list is a modern director, and his name is Gavin O'Connor, and he directed one of my favorite movies, Miracle, which is one of the best sports movies, I think. He directed Warrior, which is another great sports movie. Actually, he does a lot of sports movies. He did The Accountant with Ben Affleck a few years ago, which is kind of like an action thriller. And The Way Back was his most recent one, also with Ben Affleck. So what I like about Gavin O'Connor,
is this him?
He makes
this is him on that have on the screen here.
Yeah. So I'm gonna bust out a big film school word here. So
what's up, James?
There's a
genre. I gave it a shout out to James. Go ahead. Sorry, buddy.
James, what's up? There's a genre of film called Kammerspiel film, which is like films about lower middle class people, the sort of travails of lower middle class life. And I think Gavin O'Connor, like an American version of that, like he makes movies about kind of working class people or regular people or whatever you want to call it. They're always like super heartfelt, or maybe not always working class people or average people, but often like marginalized people,
Okay.
So like in the case of The Accountant, Ben Affleck plays a forensic accountant who's also like tied up in the mob, but he also happens to be autistic, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think I remember that. I think that was like one of the key points of the movie that I remember that they were selling on.
And it was like it was just an super interesting premise. Like a lot of times you go to the movies and you like, oh, this Taken 2, I know what that's going to be about. But The Accountant, like it really like surprised you, and it wasn't paint by numbers. It was really like fascinating, and just kind of kept you on the edge of your seat. And then he makes great, really intimate, sports movies like The Way Back, which is about an alcoholic coach, or an alcoholic who's kind of called back to coach basketball, and it's kind of his quote way back into interacting with others and getting his life, back on track. Kind of Hoosiers-esque, that movie. And then I mentioned Warrior. Warrior is just, that movie has Tom Hardy, really amazing performance by Tom Hardy, and actually an Oscar-nominated performance from Nick Nolte.
Yeah, I remember watching the trailer for this movie, and it looked pretty good, but it didn't really capture me. The trailer, when I watched the trailer, I was like, it's okay, but if you're telling me it's actually surprisingly good, then I might have to check this out.
Oh yeah, and this actor, I've forgotten his name.
I think it says here Joel Edgerton.
Yeah, Joel Edgerton. He's really good in the movie too, but it's basically about 2 brothers who are like really opposite each other. One's kind of a family man, more got his life stabilized, and then the other's Tom Hardy, who's very angry and has a lot of problems. But they're both into UFC fighting or mixed martial arts fighting, and they end up sort of like on a collision course, and they end up, basically they're on a collision course to fight each other in a competition.
Very cool.
And then all the sort of like animosity between the brothers in their family is obviously like there's kind of two sides to it. There's the animosity within their family, but then there's the stuff that happens in the ring and around the ring. Great movie. So yeah, Gavin O'Connor is one of my faves. He's a great director.
Now, why do you think he's not up there with, like, say, Nolan or or more revered names? Like, I know it's different genres and whatnot, but people still know the name, like a P.T. Anderson. Why is this guy's name not known? More I guess known outside the industry. I know within the industry, people might not might. They actually know who he is. They know what the work he's done. But why do you think he hasn't caught on to the mainstream, to people like people outside the cinephile sphere, people who, I guess, go to the theater for fun?
I think it's because I don't know, it could be a million reasons, but I think it may be because he makes more, with maybe the exception of The Accountants, he makes more like, you might say smaller films. That's probably an unfair term, but smaller films, more intimate films about the sort of inner lives of people. And I don't know that that's always like the sexiest, film genre, but it's one of my favorite film genres. And actually one of my other directors kind of has one movie in particular in that genre that I really like. I just like movies that are quiet and contemplative, and they're kind of character studies of like normal people, or
I see,
interesting people in normal circumstances.
So in other words, you like boring movies. I'm just joshing you. That's what it sounds like to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm pretty sure he's a good director. I've never seen any of his movies, so I can't say anything about the guy or his style of directing. But I am a fan of those movies too, Sean. I'm just joking with you.
His movies are exciting. Like Warrior is very exciting. Miracle is very exciting. The Accountant's very exciting.
I remember The Accountant bombing on the box office, though. Didn't the bomb in the box office?
I think it did like borderline well. Like it was one of those movies that barely they were like, should we make a sequel or not? Because it was like barely there,
Right.
Right. So there might be an Accountant too. I heard there might be, hopefully. So,
all right. Well,
have you seen any of those films?
I have not seen any of them. None, actually. I look at his filmography, and I have not seen not even one of his movies. None. I've heard of Warrior. I've heard of The Accountant. I've heard of Pride and Glory. I remember the poster, but that's it. I've never actually seen his movies, so I can't say. Like I said, I really can't say if I've seen one. James says, I've never seen any of this guy's movies. Which one is your favorite, Sean?
I'm a softie. I got to go with Miracle.
Miracle.
It's the movie about the 1980 American hockey team, and it was a group of college and amateur players who went to the Olympics, and they beat the Soviet team.
That's right.
And at the time, spoiler alert, they beat the Soviet team. Sorry, it's history. But at the time, allegedly, it might have been faked and filmed by Stanley Kubrick on a soundstage. We're not sure. But yeah, they called it the Miracle on Ice because it was just this unbelievable moment of young college and amateur level players beating the most professional, most meanest, baddest team on the planet, kind of thing. And they set that up really well in the movie. And the nice thing about that movie too is it's more, you get a sense from it like more like triumph of the human spirit more than patriotism necessarily. There's a sense of patriotism in it, like, there's the American flags, and they're obviously an American team, but it's more of a human, it's more about the humanity of it, not necessarily the patriotism of it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, then that's. Oh, you cut out there. What'd you say?
Like the achievement of what they did.
Okay. Very cool. So that the name is Gavin O'Connor. That's a name that I'm going to write down. I'm going to write it down right now, and I will check out his movies.
Hey.
Brian Wood says, "Hey Brian, what's up, dude? Fun movie, inspiring real life Mighty Ducks." Hey, there you go. And I love Mighty Ducks, except for part 3. Part 3 sucked.
I like Mighty Ducks. Yeah.
Part 1 and part 2 are great, but part 3 sucked, man. I couldn't do it. James, it's on Disney Plus. Oh, good. I'll probably have to check that out then. So, Gavin O'Connor, I'm gonna write that on my list. I'm gonna check out his movies, and if he sucks, Sean, I'm gonna hold you accountable.
You know where I work.
And I mean, Kurt Russell, he's always fun. Yeah, Kurt Russell is a national treasure. I think most people will agree Kurt Russell is a national treasure. All right, my turn. So the guy I chose as number 1 on my list is a director who everyone loves his movies. Everyone knows his movies, but I don't think they know the man, the director of these movies. Let me pull him up here so that way I can have him ready. This director directed a sci-fi movie in 1988 produced by Orion Pictures, and it was a movie about a cop who gets murdered by a gruesome gang, and he's brought back to life as a cyborg. And I think you know what I'm going to say. I think you know the name of the movie. And that name of the movie is... Whoa, where'd he go? Wait a minute. I lost him. Damn. All right, here we go.
Julio, you need to fire your technical director.
I think I do. I think I do, man. Jeez. I'm not going to freaking... Damn. Why can't I? There we go. Here we go. And the name of the movie is RoboCop. And the director is Paul Verhoeven.
Yeah.
Paul Verhoeven. Cybercop. It could have been called Cybercop. Paul Verhoeven, I think, is an underrated director because, again, people love RoboCop. People love Total Recall. Well, I don't know about Showgirls, but, Showgirls is there.
He did Starship Troopers too, right?
And he did Starship Troopers as well.
Yeah.
So not many movies, but I feel like he is overlooked because I really don't know why he's overlooked, but I feel like he doesn't get enough credit as a great director amongst the cinephiles. When I went to film school, no one really talked about Paul Verhoeven. Everyone talked about Stanley Kubrick. Everyone talked about Orson Welles and Martin Scorsese and, so on, the big names. But no one ever gave Paul Verhoeven his due. And I feel like he deserves more recognition because of his satirical look of, I guess, America. RoboCop, have you seen RoboCop, by the way, Sean?
I want to say yes, a long time ago. And we can talk about it in the order you want, but I'm definitely interested in talking with you about Starship Troopers, which I think is a really brilliant movie.
Oh, he also did Basic Instinct. See, another example of the movie being bigger than the director, which is fine. I have no problem with that because those movies are classics. He just had this, he wasn't afraid to show you just the crazy violence in his movie. Like RoboCop was extremely violent. I mean, that scene in the conference room in the beginning of the movie, not beginning of the movie, but close to the beginning, where the main villain showcases his new RoboCop, right? And this is big freaking machine with 2 big machine guns, and they do a little demo, and he has one of his employees pick up a gun and point the gun at this machine, and he says, you have 10 seconds to drop your weapon. And he drops the weapon, but the machine malfunctions. And he says, you have 10 seconds to drop the weapon. And the guy's freaking out. He's running around. And then the machine just unloads on this guy. And it's excessive. You just see the blood splattering from his chest. And he's doing the whole and then he falls on the table. And it was that his ability to just do that, just go there and not be afraid to hold it back. That's why I love Paul Verhoeven, because he's just not afraid to tell it how it is, to show it like, hey, this is a movie. Let's be gory. Let's be outrageous. You know, let's show the world just how fun we can have with this movie about a guy who becomes a cyborg. And I just love his ability to also tell a good story too, because even though I talked about all the uber violence in his movies, there's always an element of humanity in the story. Like RoboCop, the reason why I love RoboCop is because Murphy, the main character, when he becomes RoboCop, he's more machine than man, but then little by little he starts glitching and he starts remembering his human life. And then he realizes that he was once a human being alive, you know, but now he's more machine. And there's a great scene where he goes to his old house and he walks into the house. It's empty because it's for sale. And as he's walking through the house, he's remembering the images of his old life, you know, seeing his kid watching a Western show where the gunman is like doing the gun thing with the, you know, the shh, and he puts it on the side. And the kid's like, oh, wow, can you do that, Dad? And he's walking through the house. He's seeing, you know, his wife cooking in the kitchen. And then he just has this moment where he just loses it. And then he remembers, you know, who he was. Yes, that's the guy right there. That's the main villain. This actor, man, is freaking fantastic. He's a great villain in the movie.
Yeah, I what do I know him from?
He was in Deliverance.
Okay.
He was in Deliverance with Burt Reynolds and John Voight, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, going back to Paul Verhoeven, I feel like Verhoeven is one of those directors who just, like I said, is not afraid to go there. He's going to take it. He takes it all the way. Showgirls is another example of that. And Basic Instinct, obviously, as well. Basic Instinct is a whole freaking different beast. But let's talk Starship Troopers, since that's the movie that you've seen. And how would you take from Starship Troopers?
Yeah, well, you're making me realize I really need to see RoboCop. I had an opportunity to see it in the theater.
You missed out.
Time. I know. But yeah, Starship Troopers, I saw Paul Verhoeven interviewed about that movie, and I just always thought it was a really fascinating movie, and I knew there was no more going on under the surface in that movie. Like, it's very like it's kind of a commentary on like uber patriotic, jingoistic, like yeah, let's go to war, you know, propaganda. And I saw Paul Verhoeven interviewed about it, and he talked about how he was drawing parallels in the films through the art direction and through the attitudes expressed in the film to the Nazi regime, because he had I don't know that he's from Germany, but I think he was of an age where he had some experience or exposure to the Nazi regime.
He's from Amsterdam.
Yeah. So, you know, he was born right before World War II, and he would have sort of grown up with the memory of that. And Starship Troopers is really like, I don't know, it's very clever satire, I guess you'd say.
It is. Nimrod, RoboCop, or First Terminator? Which one was better? They're two different movies, I feel.
I prefer CyberCop.
Yeah. There you go. There you have it, Nimrod. CyberCop is the choice. But yeah. You're right. Yeah, Starship Troopers was definitely, I'm pretty sure, a commentary on how nationalism, uber nationalism, can be both a good and bad thing, because it did help the characters fight through the wars against the bugs, when you think about it.
Yeah, but they invaded those bugs for like no reason.
Because they're bugs, dude. Who likes bugs?
Like,
Sean?
We gotta go halfway across the universe and kill these bugs. And it was like, what?
And don't forget too, Sean. They were throwing rocks at us, dude. Right? They were throwing rocks at us, man. Asteroids.
Yeah. I don't buy it, man. Those bugs.
Yes,
Never heard.
Total
No.
Recall. Let's talk about Total Recall. Have you seen Total Recall, Sean?
Sure. Get ready for a surprise.
Yeah, right. Yes, you're right, James. You're right. We apologize. Total Recall is a huge staple in Paul Verhoeven's career, because if it wasn't for RoboCop, he would have never made Total Recall, because Total Recall was something that Arnold had in his possession. He had the rights to the movie in his possession, and he watched RoboCop, and he was so impressed with RoboCop, he was like, "I need to hire this man to direct this movie."
Hey.
And he actually got Paul Verhoeven to direct Total Recall. The remake is garbage. Then Proud, I agree. The remake is garbage. I didn't even watch it. I didn't want to watch it. Well, how could you remake an already perfect movie? Seriously.
It was, if we're going to talk about the remake, it was beautifully shot. That was one of the most beautifully shot movies I saw that year. But I agree that the story didn't do much for me. And also replacing, as much as I love Colin Farrell,
right,
putting him in that role when you saw, like, he's the complete opposite of Arnold Schwarzenegger. So
yeah, and it was also a very different movie. I assume.
Yeah,
I assume. Well, did it follow the same story as the Schwarzenegger version of Total Recall?
Más o menos.
Más o menos, yeah, because Paul Verhoeven, like I said, he is able to capture just the humanity within the craziness around in the story. Like, Total Recall, if you remember, is, they created the perfect agent, right? The perfect sleeper agent who was innocent, who was able to infiltrate the mutants, to, I guess, take down the resistance. And in the end, well, I don't want to spoil it. I don't want to spoil the ending for those who have not seen it. So I'm not going to say what happens in the end. So
the hockey team beats the Russians.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just say that Schwarzenegger saves the day like he does in all his movies. Kind of like the subplot about the fall. What's that in reference to? I don't know who he's referenced. This Joseph McCorkle.
The fall.
Well, whatever. Let us know what you in the Total Recall remake. I see The Fall.
Gotcha. I only saw it once.
Yeah, that's probably the best thing you could do is just watch it once. And Total Recall, the Paul Verhoeven version of Total Recall, is definitely a movie you can watch over and over and over again, and you get something new every time you watch it.
Can I put one more plug in?
Go for it.
The scene where Arnold's face mask breaks. It's actually a dream sequence. Spoiler alert. But his face mask breaks on Mars, and then like his eyes start to bulge out, and he's like, it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger with like eyes coming out of his head, and it's hilarious.
It is hilarious, especially. Oh no, that'll spoil the end. I'm not going to talk about the So, all right. So Paul Verhoeven was on my list. So everyone out there who's watching, who will watch after the fact, after the stream is over, Paul Verhoeven, put it down your list. Watch his films. It's not for kids, so if you have children, make sure they go to bed. Make sure they're away from the screen, because believe me, trust me, you don't want your children watching these movies. It's for adults, and it's one of those things that that kids should not be watching. The Arnold bug-eyed bulge gave me nightmares when I was a kid. You know what, James? Was he chasing you? Was he going? No, okay, just me. Okay, just me. And also, Total Recall has Sharon Stone too. You can't go around with Sharon Stone. 90s Sharon Stone. Can't. So, okay. Next on your list, Mr. Sean Malone.
All right. One of my favorite directors. He's only directed 3 movies.
Oh.
2 of them are among my favorite movies. I think they're masterpieces. The other one, I'm not very crazy about. And that's Kevin Costner.
Kevin Costner. Wow. Okay. That's an interesting choice. All right. So, Kevin Costner.
he is an Oscar-winning director, which in one way doesn't make him underrated. But when you think Kevin Costner, probably because he's only directed 3 movies, people don't necessarily think of him always as a director. They think of him first as an actor. So Dances with Wolves is a movie, like, it's way better than it has any business being. Like, I read a review once, a contemporary review of Dances with Wolves, where the critic basically said, you know, this movie's kind of like David Lean-esque. In other words, like,
wow, that's a compliment. Yeah.
It has that feeling of like a David Lean epic, like Lawrence of Arabia or Bridge on the River Kwai. And I completely agree with that. You watch that movie, especially a few years ago, they put out a 4-hour like extended cut, because I think the original film was maybe 2 hours, 50 minutes, and they added like another 40 or 50 minutes to the original. And it's like, and they made it better, like making it longer, even made it better. It's just it's like one of those David Lean epics, but it's of the American landscape and, you know, part of the American story. I love Dance with Wolves. I also love his film Open Range. I love Westerns, and I love Westerns that are like I love Westerns from like the 50s or the 60s. I like sort of like the classic template of Western, which you could say, and saying that, it's not like, oh, classic template meaning boring or old fashioned. Like, you have really interesting Westerns from that era, like The Searchers and Shane.
Right.
And interestingly, like, Open Range is kind of the opposite premise of Shane, because in Shane, the Free Rangers are the good guy, or excuse me, the Free Rangers are the bad guys, and the cattlemen, like the ranch herders, in other words, the ones who like own property and ranch on their property, are the good guy. In Open Range, it's the opposite. In Open Range, it's these free grazing cattlemen that come into town, and they encounter this ranch owner, cattle baron, who's played brilliantly by, look real quick, Julio, go down.
Oh, yep.
Michael Gambon, who plays.
Okay.
Who's one of the Dumbledores. But he plays the villain, and it's just like, it's like a classic hit you in the face Western, but it was made in like 2003. So, you know, ever since Unforgiven came out and Clint Eastwood made Unforgiven,
right,
and really even since like Sergio Leone, like, we've had a lot of like revisionist Westerns and sort of like cynical Westerns, and the Western kind of died. And then Westerns after the 70s, or after Sam Peckinpah and Leone and Eastwood, they're all very cynical, and they're all very like cynical commentaries on, you know, westward expansion and the death of the West and everything. But Open Range is just like a total return to the classic Western form. It's hopeful, it's optimistic, but it also has those dark elements where, you know, it's like they come into the town, there's an obvious evil element, a clearly evil element, and it's just like, we gotta clean house. Like, somebody has to do this. There's a scene in the movie where the rain starts to fall. There's a big storm, and one of the townspeople remarks to Duvall and Costner, I see you queuing up the postman. I see you. One of the townspeople remarks to Costner, every once in a while a storm comes through this town and washes it clean like a baby's bottom. And that's a metaphor for Duvall and Costner's characters, who are the sort of outside, more noble elements coming into the town and identifying the corruption and the cruelty that exists both in the cattle rancher guy and then also his cronies, which includes like the town sheriff and everything. And they basically wash them clean like a storm. And the last thing I'll say about Open Range is that it has the best gunfight in any Western I've ever seen.
Oh, it's a bold statement.
I got to see the movie in the theater many years ago, and the sound design in that scene, but even just the way it's laid out, the way the gunplay happens. And you'll see people who are like experts on firearms and experts on gunplay. They'll say, yeah, that's the most realistic gunfight scene you'll see in a Western. It's very messy. It's very unpredictable. And it's super exciting. So yeah, I could go on and on and on about it. It's really great. And it says to me, like, Costner really understands, he really understands Westerns, I think. And I just want him to make Westerns. Like, I wish someone would give him $1 billion and he'd make 10 more Westerns, because that's really what he's good at. Yeah.
Nimprod wants to know if you've seen Yellowstone.
No, I haven't. And I've been wanting to. I've heard it's excellent.
Yeah, that's what I heard too, but I haven't had a chance to watch it either.
But
I will say this, Sean. I don't think he's underrated.
No, he is.
No, I think he's okay, but not underrated.
Wait. Are you saying you think he's
as a director? As a director,
have you seen Open Range?
I have not seen Open Range, but I have seen Dances with Wolves.
Okay.
And I did like Dances with Wolves.
See, how can you pass judgment, Julio? I've seen all the man's films.
Okay, so. All right. That's true. That's true. You can determine someone's range if you look at all their filmography. So yes, Kevin Costner from 1990, what was it, 96? No, what year was that? Dances with Wolves, 93, 92?
Late 80s or 91.
Yeah. So yeah, I understand. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Kevin Costner from that time is different from the 2003 Kevin Costner. So okay, I will, because I saw The Postman. That's why I'm basing it off The Postman. I watched The Postman, and yeah, and I didn't like it. I was like, what the fuck is this? What is this? What is this? Why? How did this happen? How did this happen? He's an Oscar-winning filmmaker, guys. I agree with Julio. See, James knows what's up. James knows what's up.
Wow, I come in here with a hot take. I'm bearing my soul, about.
ID Crisis wants to know, do you know the story behind the script for Open Range? And Sean, I will be surprised if you don't know this.
I don't know the story behind it.
I
know the story behind Dances with Wolves, but no, I don't know the script story.
Well, ID Crisis, when hopefully if time allows, we will we'll open up the show, and I'll put the link on the freaking live chat. I almost lost it there. And then you could come on, you could enlighten us with the story behind Open Range. Oh, I think he meant Dances with Wolves. So Sean knows that, that you want to give a brief talk about what the stories behind Dances with Wolves for the people out there.
I don't remember Costner's producing partner's name or his good friend's name, but let me look it up real quick.
Okay, all right. So, but I will say while you're looking that up, I will say that Kevin Costner is an okay director, but underrated. I'm gonna say no, he's not underrated in my opinion. But I will watch Open Range, and based on what I see in Open Range, I could change my mind, and I will be more than happy to, on the future show, tell you that, yes, I was wrong, and you're right, he's underrated. But I have to watch Open Range first to make that decision.
Open Range, too, is kind of Costner in his later career, he kind of plays these characters that they're like these tall, strong types, but they're kind of decent guys, but they're also like kind of dark. Like he has a dark side. And that really started, I think, with Open Range, where he plays a Confederate War veteran who was basically kind of like a special forces kind of guy. And, he did things in the war, quote unquote, that he's not proud of. And he really has a dark side in that movie. Ooh, my lights went off.
Oh, very cool.
Dark side. Ooh. So anyway, I think it's also a marker for him as an actor, where the kind of characters he played after that, like in Hatfields and McCoys, and then the new movie he's in, Let Him Go, I think it's called. He plays characters with sort of a darker edge. So real quick, Dances with Wolves, Kevin Costner's buddy slash partner in this was named Michael Blake, and he basically had this idea for this story, and Kevin Costner encouraged him to write a novel because he said, well, if you write it as a novel, then it can be, basically like it is a business decision. Like you can option the screenplay, and then then if the screenplay sells and we make the movie, then the novel will sell really well. So and that's exactly what happens.
Nice. That's actually kind of smart. That's a very smart business move to get the hype behind that. So that's cool. That's cool. I didn't know that about Dances with Wolves. Miranda says, you think many people know about Damien Chazelle? He's only made 3 movies so far. I think so. Maybe because I did love La La Land, and La La Land was a huge hit. And also I do remember what was the name of his first film? The one about the drummer, the jazz drummer.
Yeah, he's gotten a lot of Oscar attention for.
Yeah, but I don't know if
he's made.
Maybe he's underrated, but I'm not sure. But if you, Miranda, want to come on the show later and we open it up, Whiplash. Thank you, Miranda. Whiplash. That is the name of the movie. If you want to come on later and share, by all means, please. First Man, underrated. Maybe. That's up for debate, James. That's up for debate. So, okay, Kevin Costner. Great actor. I love The Bodyguard. Made me cry. Not. I'm just kidding. It didn't make me cry. But Kevin Costner is another name that you should put on your list because Dances with Wolves was great. I will admit, Dances with Wolves was a great movie. But Postman, not so much. But I will check out Open Range for sure because I'm always open to watching new films. I'm never closed off to them, so I will check that out when I have the time. And when I do, I'll be more than happy to share my thoughts on the matter on the future episode of our show, Talking Cinema. Title work in progress. So, my next choice is going to surprise people. My next choice is Zack Snyder. I'm just kidding. It's not Zack Snyder.
I was going to say, you just betrayed everything that you've ever said to me.
I'm just kidding. Zack Snyder is not my next choice. My next choice is a director who I think should be one of the best comedic directors of all time. Ooh. Because he is, again, his movies. His movies, Nimrod says Snyder is the best. Hey, Nimrod, like I said, if you want to come on the show when I open it up, you go right ahead and you come in and you say your point. But I'm gonna let you know right now, Snyder's not underrated. So the next director I have in mind that's on my list as underrated, underappreciated as well, I think, in the terms of the cinephiles of the world, Frank Oz. Frank Oz is a director who I hold near and dear to my heart because he's done some of my favorite movies. Little Shop of Horrors, What About Bob with Bill Murray, The Score with Edward Norton, Robert De Niro, and Marlon Brando. I mean, to have those 3 names in one movie about a heist. I mean, who else could have pulled that off? Maybe Scorsese could have pulled it off, but Frank Oz did it. Frank Oz did it, and he made it. He made it work, and it's one of my favorite movies. And he started out with Jim Henson's Muppet Company. He was the guy who, he was the puppeteer for Yoda for Empire Strikes Back, and so he is a veteran of the industry, and he is a guy who I believe, in my personal opinion, is underrated as a director. He also did Bowfinger, which is another one of my favorite movies with Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin. Bowfinger is a classic. And there he is. What About Bob? Another classic movie. You know the movie, but you don't know the director because, most cinephiles, they think that we tend to focus on like, oh, the cool camera angle here, the cool camera shot there, the sequence here, but we don't ever look at the entire picture from time to time. And Frank Oz has the total package, in my opinion. He has the perfect comedic timing. He knows exactly when and how to showcase a joke within the confines of the frame of the director's frame. And I think a lot of people should have he should have won a Nobel Prize for you. He should have, James. I think he was robbed that year. He should have won, damn it. But yeah, Frank Oz. I mean, another movie, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Steve Martin and Michael Caine. Another classic movie. I mean, the scene that just had me in stitches was the scene with when Steve Martin was pretending to be the paraplegic Navy, officer, and he couldn't walk. That was his story. That was a sob story that he told this poor woman who he was taking advantage of. And Michael Caine was like, well, we could fix that right up. And he grabs this horse's whip, I believe it was, and he starts hitting his legs. And Steve Martin, just absolute comedic genius, was just like, nope, nothing. And so as the scene goes on, he's okay, well, let's try this. And then he gets harder. He hits him harder and harder and harder. And oh man, it was just a classic scene. But yeah, Frank Oz, just absolute genius in terms of being a comedy director. I think a lot of people don't give comedy directors credit for their work. It's the hardest job, I imagine, because you have to make the audience laugh. If you can't make the audience laugh with your movie, you failed, right? You absolutely fail if you are directing a comedy and nobody's laughing in your movie. That's like, for me, the biggest. It's the biggest failure ever. But Frank Oz did it every single time he made a comedy movie. And then of course, Little Shop of Horrors, Bowfinger, another classic movie that he directed.
A lot of Steve Martin.
What's that? Say that again.
A lot of Steve Martin collaborations.
Yeah, and rightfully so, because Steve Martin was also a comedic genius in his own right. Didn't he do another one that you told me? Death at a Funeral. That's right. Death at a Funeral is another classic film that he directed. And if you guys have not seen this movie, don't watch the American version. Don't watch the Chris Rock version. That movie is trash. This version is absolutely freaking, like, from beginning to end, it was just absolutely freaking bonkers. It reminded me of the old silent movies, the slapstick comedy type, but without the slapstick. And so Frank Oz is my next choice. He's my second choice of my underrated directors list. And so, Sean, do you feel he's underrated, or do you feel that he's meh, whatever, or do you feel that he's overrated? You could agree that you could say he's overrated.
No, I totally agree with you that he's great. And I think with comedy directors, oftentimes they don't Chubby Rain.
I remember that.
I think with comedy directors, oftentimes people don't think of them as like great, genius directors in the same breath as Scorsese or, Coppola and that kind of stuff. And it's a shame, because comedy is just as much of an art as
absolutely.
Agreed. In fact, it might even be harder in some ways. It's different, but it's really hard to make a movie that makes people laugh consistently. You made me think actually of a guy that I'm going to mention that wasn't on my list, and now I was like, why wasn't he on my list? So you want to segue? You want to segue?
Go for it. What's next on your list?
John Landis is another comedy director who, oh, dude, Julio, tell me, man, dude. So,
okay, go ahead, and I'll give you my 2 cents. Go ahead.
So Three Amigos, The Blues Brothers, which is all-time classic. I'm looking at his filmography here. Of course, the Michael Jackson Thriller. You can't forget that. And gosh, I'm on the wrong page.
Well, I have it up on mine.
This is live. Folks.
I have it up on mine, so you can look at my screen.
Oh, and then one of, I mean, he made like basically all the biggest like blockbuster comedies of the 90s, but one of my favorite movies that's like kind of, I don't know if it's an acquired taste or just something that never caught on, and it was a comedy that had Sylvester Stallone in the starring role, if you can believe that. And it was called Oscar.
Yeah, I remember that movie. Yes, yes.
And I loved Oscar, like as a kid. I just watched that movie over and over and over. And it's good, and Stallone's really good in it, and Stallone's really funny, and the comedic timing in the movie, the comedic performances, the casting, everything's really, really well done. And it was a shame that it was a bomb at the box office, and as a result, I think Sly Stallone later said, well, I won't try.
Try it. Do it. Come on. Do it. Come on, Sean.
Yeah. I tried to do a comedy once, but he said it bombed, and I just thought I wouldn't do very many. So, yeah. So John Landis. And I will say about Mr. Landis, too, little shout out, since I know Julio's chomping at the bit. Mr. Landis came when I was a student at University of Miami. He came to our class and he talked with us and he visited with us. And then his wife, Deborah Noodleman, I think is her last name. She's a costume designer, and she was responsible for like iconic costumes like Indiana Jones, whip and fedora, the college T-shirt from Animal House, another John Landis movie, the Blues Brothers. She was responsible for a lot of iconic costumes, and she was amazing too. And both of them sort of did a guest lecture in my school. So
very cool. Yeah. Very cool.
Last thing on Landis, he likes like magical realism. He likes just bizarre stuff that would never happen in real life and like hyping up the reality to it. Like in the Blues Brothers, when they're all waiting to go on stage. Of course, there's all sorts of stuff like that in Blues Brothers, like where the car flies over the bridge and like with a Nazi car, like they like end up flying off the bridge and then they end up falling like 1 billion feet, like from the sky. It makes no sense at all.
Right, yeah.
And then the scene near the end, a much simpler version of that would be where Cab Calloway is there with the Blues Brothers band. And they're like, what are we going to do? We have to go on, we're not ready. We have to go start the show. And Cab Calloway goes, you guys know Minnie the Moocher? And they're like, yeah. And he goes, hit it. Curtains open. And suddenly, whereas they were all in their street clothes before and totally looking frumpy, suddenly they're all in tuxedos and the lights are glimmering and it's, a big, budget show. There's stuff like that in Three Amigos where, they sing the song around the campfire and then the animals start to talk. So
yeah, yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Landis has like really bizarre, like unreal, like things that he likes to play with like that. And I guess absurdist. And I like that. I really like that kind of thing.
I want to agree with you, but I cannot agree with you. He is not underrated. He is an okay director for me.
Wow, Julio.
Yeah, I watched Animal House. I watched Blues Brothers. I watched Coming to America. I watched all his movies, including Oscar. Which, by the way, shout out to James for this joke. It's a great joke. Stallone was really gunning for an Oscar with that movie.
He got one.
for Oscar?
He got the role.
That's right. He did get the role. I just feel like he was just a good hire. Like, oh, he knows his stuff. Let's just hire him for the movie. Okay, great. And he just did his job. It was like, that's what I got from Landis, personally speaking. And Mr. Landis, if you ever do end up watching this show, I don't apologize for my opinion of you. You're an okay director. You're an all right director. I'm not saying he's bad. Okay, I'm not saying he's bad. I'm just saying that he was okay for me. He's not underrated in my opinion. I don't feel like he's underrated. He never really did anything special in my opinion. And whenever I watch his movies were always just like, okay, that was good. That was entertaining, but it didn't leave me like Frank Oz would leave me after I watch a movie, a Frank Oz movie.
I disagree. I think his movies are always sharp and they move quick and nothing's wasted, and he knows comedy. He knows how to shoot comedies.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I'm not denying that. I'm not saying that he doesn't. It was just okay for me for the most part. ID Crisis says underrated mean underappreciated by everyone or just critics. Both. I'm gonna say both. But I really don't care about critics. ID Crisis. I actually never care about what critics have to say about anything because for the most part they are always wrong, and their job is just to, you know, spew venom. I'm talking more like people who are fans of films, people who enjoy cinema, people who love movies and love, you know, sitting down on a Friday night or on a Saturday night and watching the movie and enjoying a good film, and appreciating the people behind those films who put in a lot of work and effort, and they don't get the recognition or love from not just cinephiles but the audience as well. Because, you know, when you hear the name Spielberg, right? People go to the theater. People automatically just go into the theater because they know it's going to be great. But when you look, for instance, like Frank Oz, you hear the name Frank Oz, who's that? I don't know. But the moment you say, "Oh, he directed Little Shop of Horrors," and some people will be like, "Oh, okay, cool. And I'll watch it." You know, I mean, he did that was pretty good, so I'll watch that. Or, "Oh, he did What About Bob?" "Oh, okay, cool. I like that movie, so we'll watch it." So it's mainly about underappreciated in general, I guess, if that's the short end of it.
I think that's the case with Frank Oz, where it's like people know who Frank Oz is, but they think of him as Fozzie Bear or Yoda, you know?
There you go. Exactly.
Not necessarily as a brilliant film director, which he is.
Yeah, he is. He is a very talented film director, and I think he doesn't get the love and recognition that he deserves. So, with that said, there it is, the Three Amigos, which I will say, Sean, the one scene that I do love in Three Amigos, my favorite scene in the whole movie, is the scene where Steve Martin is on top of the fence, and Chevy Chase and Martin Short are waiting for him, and he's like, "Ka, hey," and, they have no idea he's up there calling them. That scene always gets me. It always gets me when I watch that movie. But the movie was okay in my opinion. But that scene was the scene that made it for me. I was like, that scene was great because of course, Steve Martin was fantastic. He just made that scene work really well. But
well,
okay,
what Three Amigos and Blues Brothers, which are two of my favorites of his, have in common is that they're both really dumb movies. But they're dumb in like the best way. I don't know. I love absurdist humor.
Yeah, and that's fine. Like this is not about, you know, that. This is about like the appreciation of the directors. But I just can't bring myself to think that John Landis is underrated in terms of being, I guess, overlooked by the other directors. I feel like I don't know. That's all I have to say. I don't want to make this into a anti-John Landis show because I have nothing against the man. So moving on. This actually, you know, it's kind of interesting now that you mentioned John Landis and we were talking about Frank Oz. Next on my list is Jim Henson. Actually, Jim Henson is next on my list as one of the most underrated directors of our time. He, just like Frank Oz, was a director not just for the Muppet shows or whatnot or the movies he made, but his other movies, Labyrinth. I think Dark Crystal was another one that I really enjoyed. We're talking about movies here, guys. We're not going to talk about the TV shows because I'm sure he did a phenomenal job as a TV director, but I'm talking about the films that he made over there. Labyrinth was one, which was one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid. It creeped me the hell out, but I was so mesmerized by it. Just the fantastical, mystical element to that movie was just so alluring to me as a child, especially David Bowie. You know, I remember watching David Bowie and going, "What the hell is that?" But not in a bad way, but in a way where it was like I was mesmerized by him. You know, just like Jennifer Connelly's character was in the movie. You know, she was mesmerized by this character. I forget the character's name in the movie. I haven't, it's been so long since I've seen it. The Goblin King, Jareth. And so I've always loved Jim Henson's ability to be able to do that. And Dark Crystal was another movie that he made that I feel did the same thing. When I first watched I didn't watch Dark Crystal as a kid. I ended up watching it as an adult about a year ago for the first time. And I remember when I watched it for the first time, I was really impressed with his puppetry. Just the fact that he put so much time and effort to make the puppets look realistic as possible. And having the people that worked on that film, you know, pretty much make them feel real was really impressive for me. And I feel that he probably does not get enough credit as a director because of the puppets. I think the people, cinephiles and fans of movies, they don't really consider him a big deal. And no, I think he only directed 2 movies, right? If I remember correctly.
Did he direct the Muppet movie?
I think so. Yeah, Muppet Goes to the Movies, 1981.
No, the Muppet movie.
Oh, that's a TV movie. Oh, hold on, let me see. There's a movie here. What year would that be?
I want to say 79. I want to say
79. Let's see. Yeah.
Wow, I'm on fire.
You are on fire, Sean. Wait, no, you're wrong. Nope. He James Frawley was the director of that one.
I got the year right.
You got the year right, though. I will give you credit for that. But I think those are the 2 movies he directed. I think full-length movies was Labyrinth and Dark Crystal. And I wish, in hindsight, we didn't lose him so soon, because I feel like he could have done so much more if he had remained alive. Especially after Labyrinth, because I was really impressed with Labyrinth. I really was.
He was one of those, when he passed away, that there's been a couple people, like celebrities like that, where I was honestly sad for like weeks, you know, after he passed away. Like it felt like a loss because there was that element of, he brought us something we really loved, and he was of an age where he could have brought us even more, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was tragic. I mean, I was too young when he passed away. I think he passed away in 87, right? Or 80.
I often think about
90.
Yeah, I think of him and Walt Disney and George Lucas is very similar.
1980. Yeah, he died young. I think he was 53 years old when he passed away. That was young.
Yeah.
It's tragic. I'm sorry, go ahead. You were saying?
Oh, I was just saying, I was, you know, he created the Muppets, and Walt Disney, you know, created Mickey Mouse, and George Lucas created Star Wars, and there are these things that like haven't just had such an influence on our lives. And
yeah,
I think of them in similar terms, like they kind of built these empires around their characters and around the I guess intellectual property that they created. But they were beloved too. Like Jim Henson was one of those people who would like Walt Disney or like George Lucas, who it's like we loved Jim Henson because of what he gave us, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, Muppets are a treasure. You know, a lot of people love the Muppets. I loved the Muppets growing up. And so yeah, you're right. It was tragic to have lost him for so young, because I would have loved to have seen him direct more movies, especially like I said, going back to Labyrinth, because he just had this uniqueness to his style of telling a story. And I think that's what's needed in today's time. And we kind of have that a little bit with Christopher Nolan, but he's a bit more cerebral. But I like that Jim Henson was a bit more mystical in his approach to telling stories. And that's why I like it. I like the idea of feeling like you're watching a dream, like someone's dream, you know, on screen. And that's what I felt when I watched Labyrinth. I felt like I was watching someone's dream in real time. And that's why that's why he's on my list as one of the most underrated. Dr. Crusher from STNG.
Oh, Purple Smurf 13 said, "Fun fact: do you know who did the choreography for Labyrinth?" And it was Gates McFadden from Star Trek: The Next Generation, who plays Dr. Crusher.
Oh, look at that.
She was involved in the Muppets and Sesame Street, I think, and she was a puppeteer, I think, at one point.
Wow. Well, thank you for that, Purple Smurf, for that piece of trivia. Appreciate that.
So
ID Crisis. Oh, hold on. He died so young, he didn't have the time to get embroiled in a scandal. That would have sucked even more. It would have been, yeah. It would have been a scandal. Hopefully, he didn't go in the scandal. That would have sucked, yeah. To have him be in a scandal, that would be terrible.
near my house, there are two intersecting streets. One is McFadden and one is Gates. And if you look at the signs the right way, it says Gates McFadden, and it always like
wow, trip out on that.
Nerd, as a Star Trek nerd, it always like I'm like, oh, that's so cool.
All right, well, we just hit the hour mark, Sean. So, do you want to open up the show for the viewers who are watching to allow them to give their take on what they think is an underrated director, or if they feel maybe they disagree with our list, or would you like us to go down one more name to end it and then give it to the audience? What do you think?
I say let's open it up, buddy.
All right, Henson caught with hand up Muppet skirt. Joseph McCorkle, don't you dare sully the name of Jim Henson. I will not allow it. I will not allow it. Okay, guys. So you've heard it. We're going to open up the show. I'm going to put the link on the chat. Whoever wants to join us and want to give their name, here are the rules. You could either say that our list is wrong, you could disagree with it, and you could explain to us why, or you can provide us one name of an underrated director that you feel, of a director who you feel is underrated. And then you can explain why you feel this director is underrated. And for something a little extra, if you're working on a project or if you have something that you want to plug, by all means, go right ahead. I'll give you the opportunity to plug. So let me get the link here ready. And once I post it up, so the deal is, guys, I can only allow 2 at a time. So once I have 2 people on, you're going to have to wait a little bit. And depending on who's waiting, Nimprod, you disappoint me, Nimprod. I was kind of hoping you would come on the show and defend the man who calls himself a director, Zack Snyder. I'm just kidding, Nimprod. Don't hate me. He's hated because of Marvel and DC fight. No. So, okay, I'm going to put the link up, guys. If you guys want to show up and give your 2 cents, by all means, you'll be more than welcome. So here we go. Let me paste it on here. So now it's on the chat. So if you guys want to join in, by all means, please do so. In the meantime, Sean and I will keep talking about our list. So, you know what? Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll see on my end if anyone pops up, and then when they do pop up, I'll let them in. But who's next on your list?
So I grew up watching Disney movies, and I've got a director on my list who's no one's ever really heard of. His name's David Swift.
Oh,
and he directed the original Parent Trap, which is a personal favorite of mine. Haley Mills. He directed Pollyanna, which if you've never seen it, give it a chance. Don't just assume it's it's just a saccharine, super sweet movie for people who hope too much. It's actually a really good movie. And then he left the Disney studios and he went to Columbia and he directed How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, which is a musical based on a stage play of that time, which is also an excellent film. So the guy, he's a solid director, really great writer, wrote the screenplays for both Parent Trap and Pollyanna, both great screenplays. And not a lot of people know who he is. So he's one of my underrateds.
Okay, hold on. Let me, why isn't this working? Here we go. Okay. So that's David Swift, right?
Yeah.
I hope I have the right guy.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, yeah. All right, cool. So, okay. The Parent Trap. Yes, I actually did like the Parent Trap, the original, not the Lindsay Lohan version, but the original version. Wow, I had no idea. That's so. Why is he? Why do you feel he's underrated? Then I've never. I only seen Parent Trap. I haven't seen his other films. But why do you feel he's underrated in terms of what he's produced over the years in his career?
Well, I think what happens a lot of times with Disney movies is that, and anything Disney, is that the name Disney overpowers everybody who worked on the movie, the directors of the movie, the writers of the movie, the animators. I mean, for like real big Disney nerds, people know like who all the animators were, and they might know facts about the movies. But for most people, it's like, oh, that's a Disney movie, right? Whereas like, so Disney would like, we identify his name with movies, all those movies from that era, even movies that had come out after his death because it came out from the company.
Oh, okay.
David Swift was an example of like a director who worked for Disney, who I mean, really was responsible for how really good of a movie those two movies are, Pollyanna and Parent Trap. And they were two of the most successful movies for Disney, live action movies at that time. And they were really like prestige movies for the Disney company at that time. Like, in other words, Disney had always made animated films, but at that time they were trying to prove, no, we can do live action too. And David Swift was a big reason why the stature of the live action movies that were coming out around that time for Disney kind of rose, and people took them more seriously.
Okay, cool.
But again, the name Disney kind of, you don't think of it as a David Swift movie. You think of it as a Disney movie.
Right. Right.
And then I think the proof there is like he went to Columbia and did How to Succeed in Business. That's also a really solid, really great movie. So I think it proves that David Swift was not just a product of or doing a good job because he was in that Disney system, but that he's actually a good director.
Okay. All right. That's cool. All right. That is a good explanation. That's to be able to be part of bringing Disney to the dance in terms of live action movies. That is a feat. I will say that, because Disney does have the resources to produce whatever they want to produce.
Now,
And the fact that this director, Swift, Mr. David Swift, the fact that he was able to do that is an accomplishment. And I did like the Parent Trap. I remember being very entertained, and I did like the story of the Parent Trap and the way it was produced and the way it was directed. And so that's a good choice. I have to say, it's a good choice.
thanks, thanks, Julio. When you think about like the Disney company now, they're the most powerful media company in the world.
Right.
There was a time where, they were an animation studio mostly, and when they started into live action is kind of when you saw these movies, and then it really culminated with I'd say the apex of that, or the crown jewel in the live action Disney catalog, is definitely Mary Poppins.
Oh yes, yes. Yeah. And let's not forget Bedknob and Broomsticks.
I would never forget it, my friend.
So that was my favorite childhood movie. Okay.
I could sing a song from that movie right now, but I'll spare you.
Hey, why not? It's live, baby. Do it.
We're bobbing along on the bottom of the beautiful briny sea.
Yeah. All right. Before I get to my last name, because I have one more name on my list, I want to talk about one thing that's off the subject of what we're talking about. Princess Bride all the way. Miranda, you're right. No one's talking crap on Princess Bride. Princess Bride is great. I want to talk about something that's a little off subject. I wanted to get your opinion on it because I feel like you may have an opinion about this. So I want to ask you what you think about this piece of news. So let me just bring it up here. So I don't know if you know this or not, Sean, but it was big news yesterday. Purple Smurf 13 says Treasure Island and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea were big, also big. Like yes, it was. Yes, it was. Do you know who directed those, Sean?
I don't off the top of my head, but Swiss Family Robinson is another one that was a big success for them.
Okay, here we go.
What you got, man?
This. What do you think about this? Do you believe, and people who are watching out there, you guys can leave a comment as well. And if you want to jump in, hey, the link is on the comment. Click on it and join us on the conversation. But Sean, I would like to ask you, how do you feel, or what do you think this will do to the theater experience? You have HBO Max, owned by AT&T, announcing that they're going to release simultaneously at the same time their big films. Now Disney did the same thing, but they kind of failed because they try to charge a little bit more to Disney Plus subscribers with Mulan. But this here is pretty much saying we're not going to charge you any extra, guys. If you have HBO Max, you can watch these movies at the same time when some other schmuck is going to pay $10 to watch in the theater. So now I want to know what you feel about this news.
James just commented RIP movie theaters. I have so many mixed feelings about this. I don't think theaters or movie going in theaters is ever going to completely go away. But I do think we see there's a change, happening where we may not get as many, the theaters now, they may go out of business. They may go bankrupt. Who knows what multinational conglomerates will swoop in to rescue them or not. So the future is uncertain. I have mixed feelings about this because I know for COVID, this is great,
Right.
Yeah. And for COVID, this is what makes business sense right now for these movie studios. And I fear that it might be the tipping point. COVID might have been the straw that broke the camel's back with theatrical releases and the theater experience and everything. But again, I have hope that we're never going to lose the theater going experience completely. I put in a plug here. I volunteer for an organization and the board of retro format silent films. And in normal times, we do live screenings of silent movies with live musical accompaniment in the Los Angeles area. We filled a 500-seat theater in January to the brim, sold out. I think the tickets were $25 a pop to see Charlie Chaplin in the Gold Rush. And if we can sell out a 500-seat theater for a 100-year-old movie, I think it means... I know that's very anecdotal, but I think that means people want to see movies in theaters, and hopefully that'll always be the case.
Nimprod says, love it. The streaming service does very well taking this path. Those who have a streaming service can make their movies bigger for streaming, like the Snyder Cut. Once again, Nimprod with the Snyder love, bringing the Zack Snyder love into the stream. Gosh, that's actually a good take on it. I actually didn't think about it that way. You're right. People do love going to the movie theaters. And we have someone. But let me ID Crisis, I'll have you on. Then just give me a second, and let me just finish my point. You're right. You're right. People love going to the theater. I love going to the theaters. It's one of my favorite things to do. I just stopped going because with movies nowadays, you don't know if you're gonna pay $15 to watch a crap movie or a good movie. And so that's why I always kind of stayed away from it and kind of waited until the word of mouth came back to me to let me know that it's worth, my money to go to the theater to experience. Like, for instance, I regret not going to the theater when Tenet came out, because I always make a point to watch a Nolan movie in the big screen, on the big screen, because that's the experience I want. That's the kind of movies that I would like to watch whenever a big movie does come out. That's not a superhero movie, because Nolan's movie was obviously not a superhero movie. So with that said, I think you're right. Maybe this may not be the end of theaters. Maybe it'll just be the kind of like the shrink, like it's going to shrink down, and the chains are probably going to shrink and not be so big anymore. And maybe we might see the rise of regional theater chains, rising from the ashes of the big corporate national chains.
And also we may see a rise of independents.
Yeah.
Coming in to fill that void. Cause like it didn't used to be that there was a 16 plex or an 18 plex in every small city, every medium-sized city. So used to, it would be like, there's one or two theaters or one or two houses in a cinema or in a theater. So we may get that. We may get like mom and pop movie theaters again. Who knows?
Hopefully that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah.
That'd be kind of cool if that was the case. Wildabout 88, what's up, guys? I will never stop going to the theaters. Just got out of a movie. There was only 4 people there. I wouldn't go if the place was packed right now. Well, there you go. There's that. And I would still go, even if it's packed. That's it. That's all I want to say about that. So everyone, welcome ID Crisis. What's up, ID Crisis?
What's up? I'm on my phone.
So it's all good, man. It's all good. We can hear you loud and clear, so you're good.
Cool. Yeah, I think that I'm kind of two minds about the movie theater thing. One of my first jobs was working in a movie theater at the concession stand, and I know the only way they make money is by selling expensive popcorn and candy and drinks and stuff. But tell me I'm not the only person who remembers this being one of the greatest feelings of being a kid, when you go to the last matinee and it's daytime and you come out and it's nighttime.
Yeah.
I loved that.
That was a great feeling.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, it's more nostalgic because, when I was there as a kid, I always thought it was one of the coolest places to be. That's where a lot of the video games were. And in the little theater that I worked at when I was a kid, it was the only one around. So that's where Star Wars, Superman, I think, and then by the time I was working there, there was an 8plex across the street, and around the corner from that, and that was a general cinema, around the corner from that was an AMC 8. So we got all the crappy stuff. So, and that was 1989. I know I'm dating myself, but we got like They Live. Nobody thought Rain Man was going to do anything, so we got that. Do the Right Thing, Roadhouse.
Roadhouse. Oh, that's you got the best stuff. Damn.
Yeah, but what's weird is because we could go up and there was an area that you could sit in upstairs right next to the the projection booth. As long as you didn't walk in front of the camera, you were good. But you never got to see the beginning of the movie because you were waiting for everybody to go in. So by the time you got done, like with everybody's drinks and stuff, you finally went up there. There was no like context. So there's a lot of movies I never got to see the beginning of until I saw them at home.
Nice.
I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and it's hot there in the summertime. It's like 110 degrees. So I feel like I spent entire summers in a movie theater at matinee prices, and sometimes maybe getting more movies than I maybe had paid for.
Oh, sure. Yeah, you kind of squish down into the chair and hope they don't see you.
Yeah, or just wait for the next showing of Congo and hope they don't notice.
Congo.
Wow, that takes me back. Congo.
So I'm going to go in here in a couple of minutes, but I wanted to throw this out there. I don't think COVID is good all around, or at least the version of it that we're being fed, because it's keeping us at home, and I think we should be out with people for more reasons than just a herd immunity. I think that as much as I don't like them when I'm driving behind them, I think that we need each other. and movies, and being able to experience the commonality of a story that everybody can relate to is something that we should be doing together and not from home. So money not being an aspect of money not being a concern, whether the business is going to fail as a movie theater or thrive as a streaming service. One of the things about going to the movies is that you were with people who were feeling the same way that you were for an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Like you guys were all in of the same mind and paying attention to the same thing. If you were lucky, you know, or the person behind you wasn't, you know, kicking you in the back of the head or whatever,
Right.
you know, but you were all scared at the same time. You were all excited at the same time, you know, or you hated the movie at the same time and loved the movie at the same time. And I think that
Yeah.
that is something that is being overlooked in the discussion. So
You're right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. Yeah. That is true. The shared experience was definitely something that was I remember when I went to see Raid 2. It was an international film. It was a martial arts movie, and as you guys know, I love martial arts films. And in the end of the movie, I ended up fighting with the guys who were sitting like a few seats away from me after the movie was over because we all enjoyed it so much. So we were like, you know, wah, 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 you know, it's like
oh yeah,
strangers that, you know, they left, they went on their way, but it was cool to have that shared moment. And you're right. That's what's missing and that's what I'm going to miss the most, especially when it comes to shared experiences in the
for
going.
sure. And it's the kind of thing that you would want for your kids too.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want them to be like, oh, that was a great watch party that we had on my laptop. You know, that's not the same thing. But I know what you're talking about. The Natural was filmed where I grew up in Buffalo, and when my brother and I got out of that movie, the first thing we did when we got back home was get out our baseball mitt.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
And play catch in the backyard. But just to throw this out there, I'm not going to go with the director I told you yesterday. I mean, you can tell him you know, all about that, but I think that David Mamet is an underrated director.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yeah,
David
he's one of
Mamet.
my favorites. And I caught him. It was my sister's. It's kind of it's a thin thread, but my sister got us the season DVDs of Firefly, and then I made sure, because I liked that so much, I made sure that we went to see the movie, and I was so impressed with, and I'm gonna screw this up, Chiwetel Ejiofor's character, that when I saw the trailer for Red Belt, which I think is a great movie, it's around jujitsu, but it's not about jujitsu in the traditional martial arts sense of the film. But it is a great movie, and I was like, this is awesome. Who directed this? David Mamet. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about him. I didn't know about Glenn Ross or anything like that, but I started seeking out some of his stuff, and I found out that he wrote The Edge. If you've never seen that, that's
Oh,
another
Edge,
great movie.
That's a classic.
that movie's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah, what one man can do, another can do. If you don't get anything else out of that movie, that
is the line I say. What one man can do, another can do. Say it.
say it. Now I'm gonna kill the bear. Yes, I love that. So I'm looking around for his stuff. My sister, she sends me an Amazon gift card. I'm like, I'm gonna look around for some David Mamet material. And then I come around this 2011 book on DVD, The Secret Knowledge on the Dismantling of American Culture. Okay, that I didn't make my kids listen to it, but it was on in the car all the time. It's a collection of his essays, everything that he learned about going from his words, brain dead liberal, to more of a conservative thinker. And first I was like, that sucks. I'm never going to see any more of his work, because think the last thing he did was the Phil Spector movie for HBO. But
Oh.
Spartan, The Heist, The Water Engine, The Spanish Prisoner, and Oleana, which is a really, really good movie. Most of his stuff, it's not about camera angles, and his direction has much more to do with character and dialogue.
Right.
And there's something that I was able to sink more than just my eyes into. So that's my underrated director. I think he's underrated on purpose these days, mostly because he woke up.
Well, he is. Yeah, that's definitely a great choice. ID Crisis,
Yeah.
very good choice.
Thanks.
David Mamet. I mean, I remember the first time I ever seen a David Mamet film was Glenn Ross, and that was that famous scene with Alec Baldwin and the brass balls and
Always
the
be closing. Yeah.
It was a fantastic scene. I remember after I watched that scene, I was like, oh my god, this writer is freaking on point. And I know a lot of people always give like Tarantino, praise for his dialogue work, and also who's the other writer? We just talked about this earlier, Sean. Who's that? So Sorkin, Aaron Sorkin. But David Mamet is that spitfire type of dialogue that every writer wishes they can mimic, because he just has that. He has that ear that just makes it sound,
right.
like
And really good dialogue too. It's almost as if when I'm watching, like, I found this especially when I was watching Oleana, it felt to me like the actors, although they're good, William H. Macy was one of them, and I can't remember who the girl was. It's basically just the two characters in the whole thing. It seemed like their tempo wasn't natural. It wasn't like the kind of dialogue that you had in the MASH movie, where it really sounded like a conversation, people talking over each other. And it seemed like there was not missed cues, but if they were missed by just a millisecond, and it made it sound like it was too mechanical. But that's the thing, with David Mamet, he's writing dialogue. He's writing something that is going to be natural between two people. It's a conversation. It's not really a script. I mean, it is, but I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'll try again later.
Yeah, that's all right, buddy. It's all right. It makes total sense. It's got to sound natural. It's got to sound like two people are talking, but there's got to be purpose when you write a screenplay, because you have so much time to tell a story. So you got to be, as a screenwriter, you have to be wise with the words you choose to put in the movie, because you don't want to waste any second when you're shooting that film. And I think David Mamet is one of those writers who just understands that. And nothing is wasted when he writes his screenplays, and that's why I do. That's a good choice. That's a very good choice.
I mean, if he's not underrated, then his writing would overshadow his talent as a director, because that's what he's known for. Writing plays and things like that. But I'm really looking forward to talking to you some more, because we got a lot to talk about. But I'm going to go back inside and make it look like I'm earning my paycheck.
All right, ID Crisis. Thanks for joining us, man. I appreciate it. You're the first one to do it. You have the guts to do it. So hopefully you'll join us next week. Next week's topic will be overrated directors, which will be a very interesting topic to discuss in next week's episode. So ID Crisis, you take care.
All right.
Stay safe out there, brother.
Thanks. You too.
Cool. Our first call-in. So anyone else who wants to join in, you guys can go right ahead. And that's what ID Crisis did. That's exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for people who want to come on, give their 2 cents about their favorite underrated director, or maybe even the topic we were talking about earlier about the HBO Max situation, where they're going to simultaneously release films in the theater and in your home. I think, Sean, did you have something to say, or you wanted to have something to say?
Wild About 88, who's my brother Brad, he said he wants to come on. So Brad, the link is Julius put the link in the chat.
Yeah, just click on the chat, Brad, and it should take you right into the room, the green room, as it's called. And James, I'm disappointing you, James, if you're out there listening. I was
Yeah,
expecting you to be first in line, brother, and yet you refuse. How dare you? How dare you, James?
and Miranda, where's Miranda?
I understand what Miranda is, I understand why she wouldn't want to be on. She likes to stay private, which I can respect. So that's why I'm not giving her a hard time. But James, I'm giving you a hard time because I know you have something to say. I know you have something to share. But while we wait for Brad or whoever else wants to join on the show, I think it's my turn, right? For the last name I have here.
I can't remember.
I think it is my turn. Oops, my bad, Sean. I picked the wrong button. Okay. My next on the list. Yeah, I think it was. Wait, you? Yeah, because you talked about Mr. What was the director from Disney?
David Swift.
David Swift. Okay, so my last name on the list. I think maybe you may not agree, but at this point, I've already made my choice, so I'm gonna stick with it. And I'm gonna say this director didn't direct many movies, but he's directed impactful movies. The kind of movies that just leave you lingering. Like after you watch it, it just sticks with you like a skunk's freaking, spray. It just lingers on you. You're thinking about it for weeks at a time because of how heavy his ability to tell a great story is, and the fact that you're able to watch it over and over and over and over again and never get bored, and you never get bored ever, and the guy's name is Frank. Whoa, where'd he go? There you go. Frank Darabont.
You know what? As I was making my list, he almost made my list.
How come he didn't make your list?
Well, he was, I don't know, he was one of those borderline, like I didn't know how underrated he was just because he's pretty well known, and he had some Oscar love, I think, in the late 90s, if I remember correctly.
He did, but I was talking more about, remember when the underrated directors in terms of notoriety amongst the public at large. And Frank Darabont is known mostly more for the Walking Dead show because he's the one that brought it to TV. And of course, Walking Dead became one of the biggest television phenomenons to come to television in a long time. So he's remembered more for that. But Shawshank Redemption, that's what I'm talking about when I mentioned about how his movies leave you. They're really impactful and very heavy, but not in the bad way. Heavy in terms of like, he really makes you feel for the characters. Even the supporting characters in his movies, he makes you feel for them. And that's what I loved about Shawshank Redemption. That's what I liked about The Green Mile. And even The Mist. The Mist is not really his most famous one. And also he did the one with Jim Carrey. Majestic. And that movie, The Majestic, gosh, what a disappointment that movie was.
And no,
hold on. Not because of the story. Where is he at? Okay, here we go. But because of the casting of Jim Carrey. I feel like Jim Carrey was trying to, I think Frank Darabont was trying to get Jim Carrey to channel James Stewart. That's what I got when I watched this movie. And they failed. He failed because Jim Carrey is not a versatile actor. Jim Carrey is a very talented and skilled comedic actor, a physical comedian actor. But when it comes to range, Jim Carrey doesn't have it. And so I felt that he was miscast big time. And he, in my opinion, not ruined the movie, but he kind of took me away from the magic that usually Frank Darabont has when it comes to directing the film. I feel like maybe another better actor with range could have done this part, and the movie would have been. I think the movie would have been higher up there on his list as one of the greats of all time. Because Shawshank Redemption, is one of the greats. That's my top 10, my not top 5 movies of all time that I watch over and over and over again, and I never get bored. I never get bored of it. Whenever it's on TV, I sit down and I watch it, and I watch the entire thing. And the same thing for Green Mile. But The Majestic is one of those movies where I was like, oh man, this could have been so great if it actually looks better for you, man. You should stay with that. So it looks very mysterious. But finishing my point, I feel like, yeah, it didn't do anything for me. Eternal Sunshine, Range, Miranda, I don't know. I feel like he was depressed in his real life at that point, and that's why he did so well in that movie. But in 2001, Jim Carrey was at his peak. He tried to spread out, but it didn't work for me.
I think Jim Carrey has range, but I think he's the kind of actor, because he was such a big star and he's such an outsized personality, that when you see him in roles where he is playing more subdued, it's harder to accept, or it's harder to, do the suspension of disbelief, because you're like, oh, that's Jim Carrey,
That was my problem. Yeah.
But I don't think it's because he's he doesn't have the range to do that. I think it's because his reputation precedes him.
I would agree with you, Sean, if he acted better in the movie. That's look, for me, range, here's what I feel range is. Range is something where you, like, for instance, Heath Ledger, right? Heath Ledger before Joker was the Brokeback Mountain guy. He was the one movie he made with the Knight's Tale. He was the Knight's Tale guy for me. Or the other movie, the teen movie, 30 Things I Hate About You, I think was his first movie. And so before he got cast as a Joker, I was like, oh great, this freaking guy. But then when I watched The Dark Knight, and by the end of the movie, Heath Ledger no longer was the what do you call it, the 30 Things I Hate About You guy, the heartthrob. He was no longer the Brokeback Mountain guy. He made me forget that he was in those movies. And that's what I mean by range. If Jim Carrey, in my opinion again, would have done that, if he had range, he would have made me forget that he was Ace Ventura, Pet Detective.
But I think it's apples to oranges in that situation. Because the Joker is a role you can... The Joker's a role that, like, consumes you and you can disappear into. But the Majestic is more of like a straight man role.
You're right. And Jim Carrey, like James proves it. He has a good point right here. He can suffocate movies when he's miscast, and he was miscast in this movie.
Okay.
And what?
Real quick, slightly off topic, not really. Did you see Sonic the Hedgehog?
No, I have not, but I heard good things.
So for fans of Jim Carrey who just want to see Jim Carrey be 90s Jim Carrey and be the brilliant, Ace Ventura, The Mask, take your pick, Liar Liar. That movie, there's a sequence in that movie because he plays the villain, which is also really fun to see. Jim Carrey plays the villain. And he's like a nefarious, cartoonish villain, which is even better. But there's a scene in that movie where he's in his evil lair and he basically does this like dance because of how evil and happy and evil he is, right? Like it's like a 1 minute scene. You can look it up on YouTube. Yeah, Dr. Robotnik. It's a 1 minute scene. Just look up Jim Carrey dance Sonic the Hedgehog and it will improve your life.
I'll have to check that out. My brother Porfirio, he told me about it. He said he watched it. He loved it. He's like, I loved it. And then I recommend you watch it. It's a great movie. So I was like, all right, cool.
It's fun.
I'll check it out. But yeah, Frank Darabont, again, great director, underrated in my opinion. It's just The Majestic could have been in the same level as Shawshank and Green Mile, but Jim Carrey just didn't work for me with Jim Carrey. They should have casted someone else to play that role as a straight man, because like you said, you're right. His reputation precedes him. So the whole time I was watching the movie, I was expecting him at any moment to do a rubber face. Every scene that he was in, I was expecting a rubber face, and it took me out of the movie. It took the experience away from me, and that's why it would have been better if he had just not taken the role and they just given it to someone who could have done a better job with it. That's just my opinion. But other than that, The Majestic was still a great film. I loved The Majestic because it dealt with, something that I studied in college, which was the Hollywood 10 trials, the blacklist. And so I thought it was a great story, especially when he had not insomnia. I was going to say insomnia. What's the when you lose your memory? What is that called? Amnesia. Thank you, amnesia. And I like that aspect. It was great. It was great all around. It was just Jim Carrey just did not do it for me. The Truman Show, it worked because he was still allowed to do his crazy, wacky stuff, right? But this was just too he couldn't do it. I'm sorry, he just couldn't do it for me. But with that said,
he's taking a swim in his swimming pool full of $20 million right now.
Yeah, of course. That's why we could talk smack because he's at his house going, huh? What's going on? Oh, I hear some ringing in my ears. Huh? Must be nothing. Smoking a cigar. He's counting his money.
He's in his Scrooge McDuck swimming suit right now.
So with that said, we have Brad. Brad, are you there?
What's up, guys?
What's up, Brad? How you doing, bud?
Can you hear me, guys?
I can hear you.
Good. I'm sorry if my audio is bad. I'm in the car.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. We can hear you.
So, bro, what's this?
You had a guy.
Brad, what's your top underrated director?
Say that again. I'm sorry. There's some interference.
What's your top underrated director?
Oh, top underrated director. I don't know if I have an top underrated director. I'm the guy earlier who I can't think of anybody right now, but the guy earlier, he was talking about David Mamet, and that movie Red Belt he was talking about. It's really underrated. Like, I don't think a lot of people have seen it, and I remember when it came out, it did nothing at the box office, but it's kind of like a Karate Kid version of jiu-jitsu.
Okay. I never heard of it either, so I'm gonna have to check that out too.
And Tim Allen is actually in the movie. He plays a like an Arnold Schwarzenegger type character, who's like an action star. Seriously, I know it sounds like a joke, but that's true.
That sounds great.
You had me a Tim Allen.
Yeah.
Arnold Schwarzenegger type character.
Yeah.
All
so. But yeah,
all right, Brian.
That was what I was thinking of when that guy mentioned. I think he was talking about Red Belt because he was talking about, and I can't pronounce the dude's name either. The guy that was in Serenity is a great actor.
Yes, he is. I know who you're talking about. So if you don't have a underrated director, who do you? Okay, then we could switch it around. And what movie do you feel that you saw that should have got more love that didn't get the love that it deserved? If you could think of one off top of your head.
Oh, here we go. Well, is it like guilty pleasure movie or is it like
whatever you want, bud? Whichever movie you want that you felt that you saw and you were like, this is great, and everyone else probably was like, I never seen it. Okay,
I'm probably gonna risk all my credibility by saying this, but one movie I've always liked, I've only seen it twice, but I thought it was just a fun, exciting action movie, was The Count of Monte Cristo.
There you go.
Jim Caviezel and Guy Pearce was in it, and also the gentleman from Gladiator who played Marcus Aurelius.
Richard Harris.
Yeah, Richard Harris. He's in it. But I always loved that movie. I thought it was just a fun movie. I wouldn't say it's like Oscar worthy or anything. I just thought it was a movie that maybe didn't get the love people that it deserved.
Agreed.
That brings us back to kind of full circle back to Kevin Costner, because the guy who directed that movie, his name is Kevin Reynolds, who directed Waterworld And he also directed Robin Hood with Kevin Costner. He's a close collaborator of Kevin Costner's. And his most recent film, I think, was Risen, which was a kind of like a faith-based movie dramatization about a Roman centurion who was investigating the empty tomb of Christ.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a more recent film, right? Like last maybe 5 years.
Yeah, and it was pretty good. And then he's done some TV too. I think Hatfield McCoy is also a Kevin Costner project. So,
well, you were talking about The Majestic, and that's a movie I've been wanting to see again because I remember seeing it a couple times. And Frank Darabont, but it's been decades since I saw it. It probably came out in 2000 or 2002, I would assume, because I remember it was right when Frank Darabont was really hitting home runs, like with Shawshank and Green Mile.
Yeah.
But then one thing that I always wanted Frank Darabont to come to fruition was whenever he was supposed to write the script for the last Indiana Jones movie that was Crystal Skull. Like originally he was the writer of that, and I think, I'm not positive, but I think that he part of the film is based on his script, but they changed it around. I mean, I don't know if that had to do with the aliens and all that other stuff, but yeah, I always wanted to read that script that Frank Darabont wrote about Indiana Jones. I thought that would be pretty cool.
That would have been interesting if they actually let him write the script and Spielberg just directing what he wrote. That would have been fantastic if that was the case. It's a shame that they didn't allow him to do that.
Well, and like the newest Indiana Jones, which who knows if it'll ever be made. It just keeps getting postponed. But it's the same problem is happening with that. Like it just keeps getting rewritten, and then there's an idea, and then Spielberg doesn't like it, or Lucas doesn't like it. It's like all three guys have to agree on it, of course, Harrison Ford, Lucas, and Spielberg. But it's like, and now they got the guy that directed Logan. He's going to direct the movie, and which I think is great because Spielberg, he's still going to produce it, but I think it's kind of great that maybe, because Logan was pretty good, and like if he could do what he did with Logan, because he kind of sent that character, away and gave his final whatever. If you could do that to Indiana Jones the same way, that'd be awesome.
That would be awesome. Yeah, that'd be great. But yeah, your choice of Count of Monte Cristo is a great choice because that is an underrated movie, and within its right. Because when I watched that movie in the theater when it came out, and I wasn't expecting too much from it because my girlfriend at the time dragged me to it, and I didn't really know who the hell Jim Caviezel. Caviezel? Is that how you pronounce his last name? I don't even know.
Something like that. Yeah, Jim Caviezel, I believe.
Yeah, I had no idea who he was. Didn't care. Didn't have no idea who Guy Pearce was. Didn't care. But by the end of that movie, I was like, "This is a great freaking movie! Oh my god, I can't believe I liked it. It was actually a very enjoyable movie. And when it came out on DVD, I bought it. I bought the movie when it came out. That's how much I enjoyed it. So, Brad, we'll have to wrap things up. But thank you for coming on the show. I hope you join us next week. Yeah, I hope you join us next week, and we will do the same thing. Open up the show for people who want to join in. And next week's topic is going to be a very delicious, juicy one, and it will be overrated directors. So hopefully you could join us for that show next week.
A lot more explosive.
Yes, a lot more explosive, and maybe Sean and I will channel what's the name, Siskel and Ebert when they disagreed on the movie.
And it'll be less. Oh, who? Oh, really? And it'll be like, what?
Yeah. All right, Brad. Thanks for joining us, bud.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good job.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, bud. You have a good night. Drive safe.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, guys. Well, that's the show. It was a great show. Sean and I, before we got on the show, they're like, yeah, we'll do an hour. I think an hour will be good. I think I think it's gonna be dead air for for close to the end of the hour. And then look at us, almost 2 hours talking about cinema, which is what I wanted to happen. I'm glad that it happened because so many of you joined us today and joined the chat. It was fantastic. It was fun. Hopefully, you guys will join us next week. Next week, we will do overrated directors, and I already have my list. And I think some people on the chat are not going to like my list, but that's okay. That's the whole point of the show. We're going to talk about who is overrated, why they're overrated, why we feel we're overrated, and we'll see if we like each other's list. Sean, any last words before we take off?
I'm not going to say who the one guy on both Huli and I's lists are, or excuse me, is, but let's just say his name rhymes with Jack Kleider.
Nimprod
commenting, so tune in.
Hopefully you join us.
Defend your
please, Nimprod, if you can get yourself a camera, or not even a camera, you don't have to be on camera. You could just do audio. You could just talk in the audio on your phone, and you could just join us. Just join us. And James, again, thank you for joining. You should have joined on the show, buddy. There's no excuse for you, James. I'm not giving you any excuse. Nimprod, yes, I'm giving you an excuse because you gave us an excuse. But James, no, there's no excuse for you, James. You should have gone on the show and shared with us what you feel. But I have a feeling you're going to join us next week because I have a feeling you're not going to like our list. So with that said, guys, next week we will have overrated directors as the topic. And then the week after that, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what the topic will be. But we'll let you know next week. But same time next week, next Friday. So every Friday, Sean and I will be hosting Talking Cinema, and we'll be talking about various topics, just like we did tonight. Sometimes we'll go a little bit off topic, but we'll reel it back in and continue to stay focused on what we're talking about. And so I hope you guys will join us next week. It was a lot of fun tonight talking to all of you. Joseph McCorkle, I better not hear it. Well, join us next week, Joseph McCorkle, and you could come on the show and you could defend the man who destroyed DCEU. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. That's a joke. So, Sean, any departing words? Any last words before we go?
No, lots of fun, guys. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks for joining us, dudes. Guys, stay safe out there. Party on. Be excellent to each other. Wait, I got that reversed. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. There we go. That's what it is. So good night, guys. Have a nice Friday. Have a good weekend. Like I said, stay safe. And we'll see you guys here next week, next Friday, 7:15 in the PM Pacific time. Join us for Overrated Directors, and we'll see you then. Good night.